It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the following public debate organized by the Polish Institute of International Affairs Brussels office. I would highlight that this is also the following public seminar, the 8th of our Brussels office, who deals with the consequences of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We tackle it from different angles, from sanctions on Russia, from military and political support for Ukraine, up to its accession process to the EU. And if we add a similar number of debates that had been organized by our headquarters in Warsaw, and on top of that, the very special one we organized in Kiev last summer, where took place the Ukrainian edition of our flagship event called PISM Strategic Arc, where President Zelensky received a group of gathered experts. All this shows our institute's focus not only on better understanding of this war and its outcomes for Europe and globally, but also our support for a weaker side of this war, the victim, the side that has been brutally attacked and which has been fighting bravely for its sovereignty for 9 months already. I'm particularly delighted that today we are going to focus precisely on one of the key consequences of this war, the most devastating to our economy and social stability of the region, the ongoing energy crisis. Since its invasion of Ukraine, Russia's role in the European energy mix has declined significantly. And as a result, we have been dealing, among others, by unprecedented shortages of fossil energy sources, its rising prices, which is fueling the inflation. This energy crisis has hit the bloc, EU bloc as the whole, its competitive forces at the global stage, its citizens with an unprecedented impetus, with the very likely consequence that it will lead to increased and long-term energy poverty in Europe, which forces the member states and the EU institutions to undertake rapid and considerable mitigation measures. This meeting will explore, namely, Polish and the EU's recipe for improving the energy situation, both within the country and within the region, such as a gas or oil price cap, among others elements of the energy package, that I'm sure will be alluded during our discussion. All these negotiations are being held in the capital winter context. And it needs to be taken into consideration that Russia's genocidal practices of attacking civil population and cutting Ukrainian population from energy supplies, water also, will be disastrous and will provoke in short term even more extreme humanitarian crisis, even larger than the current one. So therefore, Russia must be under the constant pressure, must be punished for committing these atrocities, and we should constantly hamper its ability to finance this war. Yet, in this context, what kind of structural reform of EU energy market do we need to counter this ongoing crisis? What changes in market management we have to that have been forced, namely on Poland and from larger perspective on the EU by this crisis? And accordingly, how much pressure can Polish society withstand? These, among others, will be the key questions of our today's debate. I don't want to keep you waiting more from our so interesting set of panelists. And I would like to add that we need to change the plan because our two experts from Poland, Zuzanna Nowak, the moderator of today's seminar, and Kinga Dudzińska, they were stuck in Berlin after the other conference, so they need to take part in the seminar online. We organized on Monday a seminar with a group of Polish experts, and apparently it's easier to reach Brussels from Warsaw than from Berlin today. I'm very glad that you accepted our invitation. Zuzanna will introduce not only the precise angle of this discussion, but also our dear panelists. I would like to really thank you all for accepting our invitation. And one technical remark, that if you would like to speak, please use the microphone, because this seminar is live streamed. We have online participants, so they need to hear you. The same for the questions. So Zuzanna, the floor is yours, and thank you so much, and I wish you a fruitful exchange, frank and fascinating. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Łukasz, for this introduction and for organizing this event on behalf of PISM. I would like to also thank the panelists for coming to this debate, even though we didn't manage to reach the stage in Brussels. I am happy that we managed to meet, at least in this hybrid way, and I hope that moderation of the debate via internet connection will still be possible, and we will manage to get good conclusions that we will be able also, as PISM, bring to Poland. Yes, as Łukasz said, with Kinga, we are stuck in Berlin. We couldn't leave Germany yesterday in the evening. During the whole morning, we had troubles. So I had a little time yesterday to walk around Berlin. What I can see already is Christmas markets everywhere. The end of the year is approaching. This is a busy time, of course. And what usually we can hear during those Christmas markets is "Christmas, it's all around me, everywhere I go," the famous song. But unfortunately, I would say that this winter, during this holiday time, we should rather rephrase this song and sing "Crisis is all around me." We can observe this crisis in Poland, in Berlin, and I guess also in Brussels and in every other capital and city in Europe. What was already mentioned by Łukasz, low availability of resources, high energy prices, of course, both resulting to a large extent from the Russian aggression, coupled with post-pandemic recovery. So all these changes and challenges, they go in two directions. On the one hand, we can see the tendency of opening. Countries and the EU are opening for more cooperation between themselves. They require more solidarity. They need more exchanges with the external world, creating new, most probably interdependencies with external partners. On the other hand, I would say that we can see the tendency of closing, of putting an emphasis on protection of national markets, more and more of state interventions, measures to support the most vulnerable consumers, prevention of blackouts, of energy poverty, bankruptcy of businesses, etc. If we add to this the ongoing climate crisis, the ongoing military crisis, because the war has not stopped, if we add to this political crisis all over the world with lack of trust and problems with multilateralism, we can see that this is a very difficult environment to deal with. In this context, Poland is no different from any other country in the European Union. Some immediate decisions have to be taken, have to be made, without losing from sight the long-term goals and needs when it comes to both climate and energy. I guess everyone being in the room and or watching this this discussion, everyone is rather aware that Poland also has a heavy burden of historical energy choices, coupled with what we can observe right now, an accelerated push for the green transition. And the purpose of this meeting, of this exchange of views on Poland, is to cover the global and European context when it comes to tackling the energy crisis, also climate crisis. We can add to this because for me there are two sides of the same coin. But I have to make a little disclaimer in here. We are not here to discuss the internal policy choices of Poland. It is not the competence of none of us. We are here to talk about the conditions and circumstances in which Poland has found itself, especially the global ones. And in this context, I count on Ms. Anna Strzaska. Thank you for accepting the invitation, who is head of the division of Green Transition Division in the EAS. So I count on your valuable views and thoughts from more diplomatic perspective of the European Union. We're also here to talk about the European priorities, about European targets, European or maybe even a little bit bureaucratic conditions. So here I hope that Mr. Łukasz Lisicki will help us in understanding the work of the European Commission in this regard. We're also here to put Poland in a more political context of national preferences of other EU countries, to talk about possible coalitions, possible cooperation paths. And this will be the role of Kinga Dudzińska, who is sitting in the room behind me, the PISM senior analyst for Baltic Nordic countries and energy-related issues. In fact, as mentioned by Łukasz, with Kinga, we have just concluded yesterday a two-day bilateral energy dialogue with our German counterparts. And I hope that later in the discussion, we will also bring some observations from these debates to our today's exchange. So for the sake of organization, every panelist will have some introductory remarks of 5, 7, 10 minutes. And later I count on a lively debate, also with the audience gathered in the press club. During this debate, I would like to emphasize that Poland, the EU, we are all in crisis. The energy policy changes and adaptation to this situation, they are a must. It has to happen. But in my opinion, it is possible to tackle the crisis in a way that we come out of it stronger and better prepared for the future challenges. And how to make it? Let's start looking for the answers with Ms. Strzaska. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Does it work? Yes. First of all, thank you very much to PISM for organizing this very topical and timely debate. I'm sure it will be very inspiring. Thank you for inviting the European External Action Service. And as you said in your first words, I think it's important to see that in the very broader context of the unprovoked and unjustified Russian aggression against Ukraine and the overall consequences it has on global aspects. And I would like to reiterate that the EU stands strongly with Ukraine and its people, and we provide lots of support on many aspects, but this is a topic for another discussion. Now, how does the European External Action Service fits into these discussions? Let me start by saying that we in the European External Action Service have realized already years ago that all the green transition, energy, climate aspects have to be and are very much one of the key foreign policy priorities. Because you see how energy is being used as a weapon, you see all the global impacts, all the multilateral consequences. So this is one of the key priorities for the external action and for the foreign policy. And that we do through a number of tools in the bilateral dialogues, in the multilateral dialogues, also through the discussions in the Foreign Affairs Council. Now this green diplomacy, climate, energy have become a usual topic in the Foreign Affairs Council. Also, we have dedicated Foreign Affairs Council conclusions on climate and energy diplomacy. So you see that this really is de facto one of the key priorities. Also, this is very much mirrored institutionally. So as of September of last year, we have a dedicated Green Transition Department that I have the pleasure to lead. And we work very, very closely with our Commission colleagues, DG Ener, DG Klima, and many other Commission services. Also through our delegations, the very, very broad network of EU delegations all around the world, because that outreach is very, very important and crucial. We also work very closely with member states, and here it's more the filière ministries of foreign affairs and their green diplomacy, and also joining forces with their embassies on the ground. So as you see, there is a lot that is being already done, and we have, of course, ambitions to strengthen this further. Now, I very much liked what you mentioned, the energy and climate nexus, because this is, of course, a broader context for the whole discussion. And just coming back only a couple of days from Sharm, I have to tell you, I think we are broadly in a very difficult situation. Of course, the whole geopolitical context made it even more complicated. The whole polarization of international community, the whole energy crisis at the global scale, and also its impact on other aspects. Of course, it does not help negotiations in forums like COP27 to progress. And we are very disappointed on the level of ambition in terms of, mitigation, fossil fuel phase down, on which we had at least some hopes. Now, we very much tend to focus, of course, naturally on how does the energy crisis affects us here in Europe. How does this affect our countries, our populations, our industries, our business? And this is sort of very natural, and that's clear. And the high energy prices, it's obviously an extremely important and delicate issue also, especially the impact on the most vulnerables. But from our external action service, we also look at the global angle and the global implications, and how this chaos and very difficult situation on energy markets impact on other elements. So what is the broader impact? The impact on the food prices, on the fertilizer prices, on the global inflation, on the global economic outlook, on debt issues, because ultimately all this is very much linked. And what we also see, and these are the signals we get from the delegations, and also what I heard quite a lot in Sharm el-Sheikh, is that some want to blame Europe for that, for these global consequences. It's, of course, the repetition of the Russian narratives and propaganda that this is the outcome or impact of the EU sanctions. So we have to be very clear about that. This is not the case. This is the consequence of the Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Well, the Russian aggression against Ukraine has, and its weaponization of energy, both within the EU, but also against Ukraine, Moldova, has not only led to this energy crisis, it has also helped the EU to take this very historic and unprecedented decision to decide to give up its dependency on Russian fossil fuels. And for some countries, this is of course more complicated than for the others, because some depend much more on the Russian, used to depend much more on the Russian fossil fuels. And this has not been by any means an easy decision, but it's a historical decision, because it's also a decision for our strategic autonomy. And it's not only an energy decision. We see it as very much Europe's security strategy as well. So this is an extremely important landmark, and the Commission has come very quickly with a strategy how to then operationalize that historical decision. And then we had the Repower EU, which I leave for my colleague from the Commission, but which is broadly about how we can phase out the dependency, how we can accelerate the green transition, how we can reduce our demand on fossil fuels, and also increase savings and efficiency. And then ultimately, for those who have to still rely on the fossil fuels, how we can diversify our supplies for more reliable partners. And I think this is really something we have to be looking at, because the Repower is the strategic decision, and we have already seen quite a lot of progress. from the statistics I got from my colleagues, I see that last year, 2021, we were 40% dependent on Russian gas. Now we are at 7.5. So see how much we have managed to already do. Now, one of the consequences of this is also the transatlantic bond, which became even stronger. There is, of course, lots of excellent cooperation with the US on energy security and all the LNG and additional supplies. But that also goes beyond that. There is also very good work with the US and all the emergency support for energy infrastructure in Ukraine. There is also this very important work on how we can cap the incomes for Russia from the fossil fuels, because that's for them the means to finance the war machine. So that's a very important element I would like to sort of flag. And then, of course, we've been strengthening also our work with other suppliers in Norway, North Africa, Gulf. And that is also part of our energy diplomacy. Now, there is also this element of the joint purchasing mechanism and the EU energy platform, which is part of it and to which we also would like to contribute. And this is something that is really coming now up very, very clearly. Now, obviously, the focus is very much on the short term, on this winter, and I think even more now on the next winter, because that can be even more complicated as we see it now. So there is this very natural focus to look at the very short-term perspective. But I think we have to be very mindful also of the more broader and long-term perspective. And this is also what comes out from the Repower, the whole focus on the accelerating of the green transition. One thing I would also like to flag, which is maybe not that famous as the Repower EU, is the European External Energy Strategy that the External Action Service has developed together with our colleagues of the Commission, which is a sort of an external dimension for that, which realigns itself with the Repower for the diversification part, but which also puts a lot of emphasis on how we will work with the countries around the world, because they are also facing the impact of the global insecurity and the energy turmoil, and also how we can work with them in a more longer term perspective on accompanying the green transition. So we work quite a lot on hydrogen, for example. We have these partnerships, and typically you have these partnerships where you have both diversification short term and the more long term, which is how we can work on the renewables. We've been doing lots of work on methane, on how we can curb the emissions and leakages, and also promoting overall the energy savings and efficiency. And that was very much stressed in Sharm, that we also should look on how we can make the energy efficiency and savings a global priorities. So this is our key message to our international partners around the world. We are not only focusing on ourselves. We know that our diversification has some consequences, but we are there also to work with you, to help you both in a short and a long term. Now, we also have to think about the global energy architecture, the institutional framing, but this is a longer debate, but just wanted to flag this as well. And as my final remark, there is this question, which is also one of the questions for the panel: has the EU abandoned its sort of ambition for the green transition? And this is also what I've heard quite a lot in Sharm el-Sheikh, and what is also spurred by the Russia disinformation campaign. So the reply is very, very clear. No, absolutely not. We are staying the course. We are even accelerating. And we have now the Fit for 55, so the European Green Deal legislation in its final stages. And with this, we can be even more ambitious on cutting of our emissions. You might recall that the EU has committed to be climate neutral by 2050 and to have the cut of emissions by 55% at least by 2030. Now, if this legislation is operationalized, we can even talk about cutting of emissions by 57%. So this shows how much we are committed, what we do in practical terms. And that's also the message for the next months, because I think for us now, the important part is also to work towards to work with all the partners around the world for a very ambitious outcome of the upcoming COP28 in Dubai. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It is very important to remind all the time that we have those long-term goals in our mind and we are not losing them from our side, simply because this allows us for a better establishment of current and short-term and better framing of short-term energy choices. So thank you very much for this overview. I will come back a little bit later with some questions to you. But now maybe let us have this European perspective. So I would like to ask the representative of DG Ener to cover the topic. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and also from my side, big thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure and a very timely debate, as it was mentioned. I think energy is become as popular as football during the World Cup in all leads, Financial Times, economists. Energy is everywhere, so that became indeed a big topic. Maybe I think I fully agree what Anna was mentioning. So to kind of marrying the long-term objectives, the climate objectives, climate neutrality, and the short-term challenges, and I think it's very clear from all levels of our communication that we are not abandoning that, but we are accelerating. But it's also seen in facts and what we have been all together doing, not only as institution, but together with member states and European Parliament on the legislation and various initiatives. So Susanna was mentioning that my task is to guide you through the bureaucracies here. It's not an easy one, but let me guide you through the actions, initiative, and the issues that we have achieved until now. So I think actually we entered this year, even before the invasion, in a difficult global context. The global supply and demand was tight. Just to recall that we already had the high energy prices, high volatility in October. It started last year, and then as there was a first initiative of the Commission of the so-called toolbox, so the instruments that member states can use to ease consumers, industries, and fight the challenges of the high volatility and high energy prices due to the global demand issues. Of course, there was pandemics, China's recovery, and precisely, I mean, to simply say, there was not enough gas on the global market for everyone. And of course, we had an issue already of Russia stopping supplies, starting to stop supplies on various routes. Then obviously we had the Russian invasion on Ukraine. That's absolutely deepened the energy crisis, and the EU response on the energy front was already very quick and firm. So we had the Repower EU plan that was already mentioned, with a very clear objective to reduce our dependence on Russian imports of fossil fuels. So a very very firm and robust goal, and also, to be fair, also challenging, right? We have to now replace over 150 BCM of supplies from one supplier. That's definitely weaponized as it was mentioned, the energy, and replace it via other sources, but as well other fuels. So and there was a repower as a strategy, and of course various legislative initiatives that we proposed, and some of them have been already adopted in the, I would say, a record speed. I think the record was 2 weeks for the first of the Safe Gas for Europe plan in July. So we started. Actually, we started first with our mandatory targets on the filling of storages. So the logic was we have to be prepared. We know that there will be security of supply challenges. We need to have our storages full. So that was one goal, with the demand reduction, of course. And I think that's a very important part of repower that is, I think, sometimes missed. Maybe it's not that catchy in a way than as targets, but I think that's absolutely the key. We need to reduce our demand, and that's absolutely crucial. Of course, energy efficiency and all the energy efficiency plans that we have been as well working are helping with that. So storage is full. That's the first thing. Secondly, of course, we had to target the high prices, volatility. So then in September we had another proposal, record speed, but I think it was longer than 2 weeks, as far as recall, on the electricity emergency regulation with the inframarginal cap, and as well demand reduction on peaks. So this goes hands in hand. And lately, and we had the Energy Council just yesterday. Actually, we had already, I think, around 5 extraordinary energy councils. So they become even not extraordinary in a way. That's a normal thing. But that I'll come back at the end. That also Susanna mentioned the unity and how we deal with that. So where we tackle joint purchasing, that was mentioned, also new LNG benchmark and solidarity gas issues. So and maybe 2 words about joint purchasing, because I think it's a very interesting new feature, and that's and support towards that from all member states. So shows as well the unity here. So there is, I think, joint purchasing has 3 big aspects. So the international outreach that we are, of course, dealing with, doing with EES, demand and demand aggregation. So with this legislation that is now in the pipeline, we will have all the necessary tools to very quickly operationalize joint purchasing, voluntary joint purchasing. That's important. That's important to mention, to operationalize it very soon. So that's, and what as well was mentioned earlier, I think it's, and on the facts, Fit for 55, all the legislative proposals, over more than 10 of them, because it's not only energy, it's transport, it's climate, it's environment, they are progressing well. And in the record speed. We had new as well proposals facilitating permitting of renewables. So that's yet another one. So I think it shows that we are not forgetting, and together tackling the shorter term challenges, very difficult ones nowadays, we are accelerating our transition in line with 2030 and 2050 objectives. And the last point, I think you pointed out to the big challenge. So unity versus the let's say incentives to tackle issues and challenges, energy challenges, only nationally. And I think the amount of extraordinary energy councils, European councils, legislation that is basically supported unanimously shows the unity, and I think that's a great achievement, and that's what makes us strong in Europe, that we can tackle those difficult issues. Of course, there are specificities, regional, national. So I think it's even a bigger achievement that we managed to cover that united, and we are more efficient there, and the to finish, of course, member states tackle issues on the national front. Some issues would be more efficiently tackled on the national front, but just to recall, all the flows of gas are on the record levels on the cross-border points, electricity as well. We have borders, as always, still fully open. Member states are helping each other. There are new solidarity arrangements, even stronger. So I think that shows as well the need for unity, and it shows that unity. Of course, in a very difficult situations, we will, I think, in the second round probably tackle the challenges. But yeah, I would say we are on the good track on that. Last but not least, of course, next year might be even more difficult, but I think we have done a lot to be prepared, and we need to continue on that pace.
Thank you very much. As far as I know, Ms. Trzaska might be willing to leave us quite soon. So before I give the floor to Kinga for more national, international, and not European perspective, I would like to ask you one question, because we just got this very, I would say, optimistic overview of internal acceleration of activities and the strength that we are building. So I would like to ask you about your vision on whether there was any change of demand from more cooperation from the European Union, from our external partners. So can you see the growing demand for European activities abroad and European support abroad? And whether you can also observe such acceleration of activities and such strength after what we heard about the internal situation. Maybe just a few words from your perspective on the global situation, and then we'll come back to further continuation of the topics.
Thank you very much. I'm definitely not willing to leave you earlier. I just have to, because there are all these post-COP now discussions, which are very urgent. But no, thank you for the question. Absolutely, you are absolutely right that one thing is what we do internally, and it's good that we have this quite an optimistic story to tell, which is already important to show to the others that we are doing our part. And when we call for the ambition from the others, it's also important to show that we walk the talk and we are doing our part and we are the leaders. And yes, indeed, we are only responsible for a very little part of emissions. I think it's 8% globally, and it's decreasing. So you definitely need all the others to come in and to show the level of ambition. And that was exactly our message for Sharm el-Sheikh, and that will be our continuous message for Dubai next year. And we see that we can also work very, very concretely with some of the countries to do that. I can give you an example of a couple of countries we work very closely over the last year. One example is the Just Energy Transition Partnership with South Africa. That was a very important initiative that was announced last year in Glasgow at COP. So we are basically working together with South Africa for them to help them reduce their coal dependency and move towards the more renewable energy. This is, of course, a very complicated case. For South Africa, it's also a very political case. So I can tell you it's not an easy work. And of course, we have to put lots of money as well, because it's not just helping and sharing our sort of experiences and suggestions, but essentially it's about funding. And obviously, there is not enough funding in the public coffers, and it's not in the EU coffers to come up with. So we also have to rely very much on international institutions, also on the EIB, to work with those partners. So that's the example which is, I think, most advanced by now. And we came with South Africa at Glasgow to at Sharm el-Sheikh to the stage of an implementation plan after a year of work on how we operationalize this commitment. And now we work very closely also with some other partners. Another example is Indonesia, where we had in Bali at the last G20 summit also this political declaration that we will continue working with them on. We will work with them on this just energy transition partnerships, also about coal. Our next client is Vietnam, where we hope we will be able to do that also mid-December. And this is EU with some other G7 members, so not just EU, it's a broader coalition. And our hope is also for India and Senegal, which are perhaps a little bit more complicated cases. But it's a very, very practical example of how the EU plus others, like-minded and progressives, can bring something very operational and meaningful. And if I may just make one reference to Poland, I think Poland has also quite a lot of experience to share from its own transition, which could be a very credible partner for these countries and share its lessons learned and experiences. If I still have 1 minute, I can just add another example, which is work on methane. So again, here last year in Glasgow, the EU and the US launched an important global methane pledge. It's basically an initiative to reduce globally, collectively, methane emissions by 30% before 2030. And some of you may know that methane is extremely problematic greenhouse gas, because it's even more problematic than other gases. So this is where we can take a quick action. And now in Sharm el-Sheikh, we reached the objective of having reached the number of 150 countries coming to this, the global methane sort of initiative. We still miss China, but we had quite an interesting opening when the Chinese envoy came to our meeting where Spec Kerry and EVP Timmermans were having a ministerial meeting and started to discuss with us how China could also work on reducing methane emissions. But we still need those big ones like India, Russia to join. And then there is also this idea of we collect, you buy, so how we can assist countries who have the methane leakages to capture that, and that can be used also for commercial purposes. So I think there is a number of examples, and we are very, very active on that and accelerating. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, just one last question before you leave. Do you also, just to connect the dots, as we have the crisis and our financing, we have troubles with financing, we have to also think about ourselves and our own just transition. So we are not able to raise even more money for our external partners, and we have to think of other options, how to help them. Do you also envisage an increased work on not only financial transfers, but also technological transfers, intellectual property rights, or other options that would not charge the European budget?
Well, yes, that's of course also the technological transfers, and all this is also, of course, part of the broader picture. Now, on the financing, I think we have to be also very clear and honest. We have agreed to a multi-annual financial framework which binds us till 2027. So the funding is limited in a way, and what we can do is also to look how we can maybe strengthen here and there, and how we can use the funding which is there for this, and how we can also partner with others, I mean the US, Japan, UK, and others who can also come in. But that's about public money. Then you have really the need to come in with all the other sources of funding, because the public money will never be enough. That's very clear. So it's about de-risking investments in those countries. It's about bringing the private capital. It's also about reforming the multilateral financial architecture, which was very clearly put on the table also in Sharm el-Sheikh. So obviously there is a need for a multiplicity of sources because we need huge money. And first of all, we need also the commitment from those countries who have to be more ambitious to start this transition that we can help and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for this Polish accent in your answer in the previous one. So, of course, we had quite a number of comments, more broader ones, more general ones, of course, of huge importance. But what I liked during your presentations was that you both treated, also because of the fact that you work for the European bodies, you treat all member states as one. And this is a very important approach and very important message. But there are some differences between the countries. There are some sometimes problems, misunderstandings, but sometimes there are perfectly working coalitions and groupings of countries that work very well together and make this whole union even stronger in this diversity. So now I will just simply turn to Kinga to discuss a little bit more different perspectives of bilateral or multilateral settings within the European Union. We can't hear you, Kinga. So we have a small technical problem.
And now?
Now that's better. It's okay.
It's okay. Okay. So one more time, thank you very much, Zuzana, and it's nice to be here. It sounds a little bit strange in the circumstances. However, as Zuzana mentioned, we've got already some communication problem and we're stuck in Berlin. Zuzana started with the citation of this song regarding the Christmas or crisis everywhere, and with a little bit being sarcastic and skeptic, maybe I've got in my mind the next one crisis, the next one citation, which means, and I think everybody knows that, always look on the bright side of life. Yeah. So we can change a little bit and just say always look at the bright side of crisis, for example. And with this, I would like I will have two bullet points for my presentation. Thank you very much for this intervention regarding the external actions and European perspective. However, as Zuzana mentioned just 1 minute before, it is not so easy to cooperate when you've got a different interest, or the background for cooperation is not so common, and the diverse of the perspective is so strong that the compromise seems and it is in practice not anyone. And I would like to focus on a few things. First of all, a little bit starting with the one point that the discussion about the energy at the moment is not necessarily only discussion about the energy itself. So even if we're starting with some directly indicated energy issues, having in my mind at the moment electricity prices, gas prices, heating the problems. In practice, we're all talking about the whole situation internationally, not necessarily only regionally even, and having on the other hand the fact that in Ukraine we still cope with the war situation. That means that we do not only have the weaponization of energy at the moment, but securization in the way of thinking. And this week was and still is for me, from my point of view, a marathon in energy conferences and meetings. And I started at the beginning of the week in military and civilian seminar. From the NATO perspective, actually, when energy issues were put on the agenda as security issue itself, and here we can start talking about some regional perspective, and I mean here Poland and Baltic states itself, and which especially are combining energy issues as security issues, and Baltic states were on the top since years in this area. That's why talking about these energy issues and cooperation, it's first of all easier to talk when you have got when you've got the common perspective of security, the interest in energy and security, and cooperation between Poland and Baltic states is the best one of here. Directly starting this regional and national perspective, I would like to mention a few points as a main important words in this. First of all, we need to take into account, as already been mentioned, long and short perspective, and the crisis management from the national point of view in the is in fact the way how the regulation are implemented, and the way of thinking how to regulate and react actually on the crisis security. And this is the big challenge for the solidarity. And here also the Poland and the Baltic state cooperation is a good example of solidarity in the issue of energy security. And what's the good example of that is first of all the perspective that the cooperation in energy sector with Russia is not in business as usual anymore. And Lithuania was the first one country which resigned from gas from Russia at all. Next were the rest, Baltic states and Poland. And that's why here also the determination is in a strategic way of thinking in energy sector as well, very important, and will be proved in the long-term perspective actually. And what is in practice very good working is and a little bit quite strong and important lessons from Ukraine, but for other countries in the region, not necessarily only in the region. I mean here the diversification and regionalization of energy sector actually. And what else is very important in this cooperation on the regional bilateral level is flexibility. Flexibility and making the regional market functioning very adaptable and flexible on the circumstances and what's happening in reaction of the crisis situation, for example. And that's why I mentioned, first of all, this cooperation between Poland and Baltic states regarding as well as gas market, as well as electricity market. First of all, we've got already the agreement between Poland and Lithuania, which reached finalized this year. We're looking for the north. We've got the Baltic pipe, and the north direction will be, in my opinion, the even most important in the next longer perspective. Baltic Sea region, Baltic Sea offshore, which will be ongoing in the next year as a strategic point of cooperation, also with other countries, not only here, I mean Poland, Baltic states, but also Nordic states, as well Germany, as the Baltic Sea region is one of the renewable energy. Renewable energy source. Last but not already also our discussion with is it okay?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Zuza, Kinga, are you with us?
Do you hear me?
Yeah, it interrupted, but please make your conclusion. Yeah, it's possible to hear, but yeah.
Okay, I don't see Zuzana at the moment, but I don't know if something happened actually.
I am here. It's just for the Wi-Fi connection. So I turned off my video so that you have a better, more internet for yourself.
Okay.
Thank you, Zuzana, for your crisis management.
Yeah, crisis management is one of the most important at the moment. So coming back to my short summer up and discussion with Germany actually also regarding the supporting for Ukraine and what important lessons we already have from this Ukraine war, energy sector crisis during the war, and what will be very important for the next decades actually, not even only years. I think here, first of all, coming back to our discussion with German partners, even if we do not necessarily always have our common perspective in different energy sectors. However, this regional cooperation, bilateral flexibility, and supporting Ukraine is the one of the major issue for the region, and both sides, from German and Polish partners, concluded already that indeed regionalization and diversification, decentralization of energy sector and flexibility will be very important in the next year, and not to be independent so much from one sources and one suppliers, or just one more thing, coming back to Nordic countries, Sweden will take part in and will take the EU presidency since January 2023. And from Polish side and Polish perspective, it will be very important part of the year where as well the eastern policy of the EU and energy issues will be very important, as well as Sweden already decided the opportunity to coming back and take into account more seriously nuclear power still on the table, and using the nuclear power as a source. That's why I think that especially the regional, building the strong and flexible regional market, even the gas and even electricity, having also in mind the fact that we still are on the way to synchronize Baltic states to the European network grid. It's the strategic step in the next years, and that's why this effective energy crisis management and regulations, and we are still discussing on the EU level this cap mechanism and the way of interventionism, and how each countries are dealing with the energy crisis will determine actually the common interest, and what will be very we've got the momentum at the moment at the situation of energy crisis. This is also the chance to change. However, as very often it is happen, even if it will be the first change to transform the energy sector in the region.
Thank you very much, Kinga. Okay, I will have a question right now to Mr. Lisicki. I am wondering, because Kinga was discussing quite a lot the national perspectives or bilateral perspectives, but what I hear from numerous countries is the worry about the European interventionism on the energy market, while the energy market was for a long time perceived as a market that has to run itself without external intervention. So my question to you would be, to what extent European interventionism on the energy market is a topic of discussion within the European Commission? Is it a worry for you, or is it just something that has to be done?
Yeah, I think the first challenge is how you defend interventionism, because many treat it differently. No, is the regulation already an interventionism or not? But no, I think it's a good question, and that brings me to the point on the whole discussion. And seems we have been all quite positive here, so that's a good sign as well. Just to remind, I mean, every member state has different specificities and different regions. We are coming back from a bit different also logic on regulating the markets. Let's recall, some countries have regulated prices, some don't. Nordics are much more, as we are mentioning, energy markets only, right? For example, capacity mechanism are not that much used there, while in other countries are. So we have, it was always like that. There were differences, but we managed, and I think that's important to recall, we managed to create an electricity and energy market that it's interconnected, not only because of the infrastructure, but also the logic, how the marginal system works. So the sector couplings. So that's a huge achievement if you think what are the differences really and the internal logics. The same for gas, right? I mean, Spain, who has 7 LNG terminals, looks a bit differently to the issues compared to, let's take an example of Czechia, right, or Slovakia, that they don't have, they are landlocked, but still we manage, and I think in the last year to create a mechanism and to facilitate also with the regional groupings for the joint purchasing, the regional European solutions, of course, to the extent this is possible and acceptable. And I think that's what we should continue, as I think we are quite good in finding the compromises in general in Europe. That's my personal feeling, and I think we should continue on these endeavors. But on the interventionism, indeed, I think there is a lot of discussion also since the high energy prices and all the challenges. You know, how to deal with that. There have been many state aid supports that are of course monitored by the Commission, so that's one type of the interventionism, but also the big discussion, and that's what we are now working on, that was already announced on various occasions, on the revision of the electricity market design. So that's, I think that's what you were a bit alluding to, and of course that would be a challenge to find you know, the solutions that would be acceptable to everyone, your member states, European Parliament. But we have, I mean, we have an ecosystem in the market that was delivering for many years. Of course, there are always room for improvements, and we started this debate, and it will be, I think it will be a very big debate in the next year. So in a way, to sum up, of course there are many interventions on the energy market, but also we have I mean, quite clear rules, what can be done, what cannot be done. We play in line with those rules, and now we need to think if some things would need to be changed, improved to even better deal with the current challenges, and also having in mind, of course, the long-term goals, right? So then we need to as well think what delivers now the quick solutions, but also does not deviate from the long-term goal, electrification based on renewables, etc., etc.
Thank you very much. Before I open the floor for questions from the audience, I have a question to Kinga, because Łukasz, you said that we are good in finding compromises. But in fact, what we also saw in Berlin yesterday and 2 days ago, we had a very quick debate over Nord Streams, as it was an element on which we couldn't find any compromise between Poland and Germany. Somehow this element disappeared from our debates without referring to what happened. But in general, the topic is not more relevant in our bilateral relationship. So it really gave us a momentum for going further with our discussions, for moving on, all the more that we are all in the same trouble with high prices and a low supply. So Kinga, can you see any other big elephants that we had in our rooms that is disappeared right now on this European level among the European countries? Or can you see any other improvements that were possible only thanks to this crisis? As you said at the beginning, looking at the bright side of the crisis.
Exactly, as you mentioned, and I was a little bit more delicate at the beginning, that even with the partners which we did not necessarily had a so common interest in the past. Nowadays, it seems that it is easier to talk, at least, and it is easier to try to find compromise. And other improvements or the places where this compromise could be found, and as you mentioned, we are all in the situation where actually everybody needs to start to think in this a little bit in the same way. We need to fight the same problems: the prices, the lack of supplies, this reconnections and rebuilding of the market, and to make it on the new rules and to make it fast and to make it effective, we need to at least try to find short-term effective solutions. And that's why it is easier a little bit to talk, and that's why this is let's say more or less bright side of the crisis. And the need, and as I said, even if a crisis is a chance, even then, if it is a forced, the chance to forced change, actually. So this is one of the improvement in the place to talk. And then the second I a little bit mentioned about is the determination, the decisions which have been made, and I mentioned Baltic states not without a purpose, and those examples are for me a very good example of the determination and the following the decision which were made a few years ago and nowadays, and let's give even the decision of the Lithuania a few years ago, when still since 2015 the LNG in Klaipėda were working on, and it was also the example of the decision made by the political decision as well by the Lithuanian and next other Baltic states decision to not to try to not be independent from Russian gas supplies. And they are following those decisions in other dimensions, and they strive to be independent in the electricity, in the gas market as well. That's why this determination, which is for which European countries are forced by the crisis, actually. This is also a little bit, let's say, the bright side of a crisis, because this is the momentum when the decisions need to be made, and there is no place to making only political discussions or giving the place only for the business. This is also, let's say, the bright side of the situation when okay, we still have the interest, even the national interest on the table. However, this is not the place and the situation when only business is as usual at the moment.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask if there is any question from the audience. If there is, please just introduce yourself, because I'm not sure whether I would be able to see you, but at least I would like to know who is speaking. Thank you.
Right. I have one question. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. My name is Włodzimierz Supryszak. I'm from Polish Electricity Association. I have a question to Mr. Lisicki. He mentioned before that we are facing challenges next year, still facing this situation in energy crisis. I'm curious, in your opinion, what would be the greatest challenge or problem to overcome in the situation we are in? So maybe the plans for the next year, the greatest challenge. Thank you.
Go ahead, please answer.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is uncertainty, in my view. And actually, no one knows really what will happen, how the situation will look like next year. And I think it's due to the fact there are so many factors and variables, starting from the weather. Will we have a cold spell? We have been lucky in October because it was warm. So in a way, the heating season started later. So we still have gas in storages, right? That's just now one example. But imagine that we have extremely cold February everywhere. Then we are completely in a different situation than if it is relatively warm February. So that's just one of the examples. What happens in Asia, which is actually determining with which part of the world we are competing for gas. So what will happen with nuclear in Japan? Will China really boost after the pandemics? Yes or no? So those are all the uncertainties which you can bet on one scenario, but it is not to say that we should not be prepared. And I think that was what I was mentioning. So we have been doing already a lot with the storage fillings and all the measures now, joint purchasing that might come into the picture for the next year. So I think we are, relatively well equipped. It will be a challenging year due to the factors. And the one thing is this year we will react, hopefully still united and effectively to all the let's say uncertainties factor that will be coming into the picture.
Thank you.
May I add also one more question? Because as you mentioned, there are planned joint purchases in the next year. Are there any assumptions when these can launch? Is it first quarter of the year or second? How does it look like? Do we have any estimates in this regard?
Yeah, so I think a lot of work has been already done in the regional format. So we start. That's one more time. I'm coming back to regionalization. So we established the regional groups also. So that shows one more time. That's an example that we are acknowledging that some regions have a bit different needs. In some, you have 5 terminals that are working. In some, Baltic states are a very good example, right? You have for now one LNG terminal. The another one in Finland is coming soon, and you have one big storage, which is basically gas storage, which is serving all 3 countries. So that's that's a situation that needs to be managed there. So a lot has been done. The industrial advisory group has been already established. The first meeting started, and we are on the, let's say, on the level of aggregating, looking on the aggregation of the supply and demand. And once the legislation is adopted by member states, then it will all start soon. But I mean, it won't be from one day to another that we will have joint purchasing of gas, of course. But I mean, next year would be important for that.
Thank you very much. Łukasz, how is the situation? Łukasz, you're Tushman. What's the situation in the room?
The situation is dynamic.
Questions?
Always. Yes, I mean, I would like to, maybe there is one more question, some comment. Anyway, I have one question. I would like to ask all of you, in fact, and I would like to build on the point that Kinga Dudzińska mentioned regarding this need of the way of thinking about energy security. You mentioned the threat, weaponization of energy by Russia, for instance, but also this need to counteract and to think in security terms regarding the management of this current crisis, not in a short or medium term, but in long term, regarding the point that you, Łukasz, mentioned, the need of storage feelings. So I have a question regarding the level, how we are prepared regarding the possible, that we can anticipate, possible aggressive hybrid Russia's actions to hamper, namely to hamper our ways to search alternative and to manage alternative energy gas sources, for instance. There are so many important initiatives that have been led by European Commission. I'm thinking about negotiations and talks with African countries, North African countries like Algeria, but also the countries from the Caspian Basin, Azerbaijan, and to be closer to the Polish context, our plans to count on the supplies from Norway, and if you think about electricity from Sweden for the Baltic Sea. So are we thinking about how to protect these channels and how we take into account this possible Russia's threats in our search for these alternative sources to fill these storages for the next winter?
Maybe Kinga, do you want to go
first? I can start. First of all, yes, I agree. In the perspective which I'm looking at the energy since years, actually, it's via security issues and dealing with it, first of all, at the beginning with Baltic states and nowadays with the Baltic Sea region. So, and thinking regarding this security dimension, I've got one word in my mind. I mean resilience, and how important and how effective will be we can be, and we can how fast and how we reach this resilience in energy sector. And already the Ukrainian case proved us that energy infrastructure is one of the most important issues in this resilience, and this managing energy sector will be even more important. And do we are prepared? Yes and no, actually. The clue of this is that first of all, this infrastructure is very, very vulnerable for the disruption, and The case of electricity grids is the best example. That even if you try to prepare, it's not necessary easily to be resilient in this dimension. And coming back to your example and direct question about the gas and other direction and to be resilient independent here. Okay, this, in my opinion, this year is more easy to predict instead of the next year, and what will happen in the next year regarding this supplies and to build this the level of security. The hybrid threat from Russia, this is the most the biggest threat for countries in the region, especially as we know, Baltic states since years are the one of the main actors of hybrid threats from their directions. From Russia's direction, and Poland is the second on the list, actually, and those threats will be even so Poland and Baltic states will be even more vulnerable in this dimension. That's why this cooperation in this direction under this regional region will be so much important. Even having in the case with Nord Stream and the case with Sweden and Finland joining NATO also proved that those threats are coming even more important.
Thank you, Kinga. Mr. Lisicki, would you like to follow up? I know that you already covered the challenges of uncertainty, but maybe a follow-up on the question of Łukasz, and maybe also a final word on the topic of this debate. Will all be okay?
I'll start with Łukasz question then to think about how to answer on yours at the end. So yeah, so I think of course then the incidents on Nord Stream 1 and 2, I think it's triggered the debate about the security, and a lot of, I mean, also transatlantic bilateral cooperations were there and are ongoing indeed to protect, and discussions also with the exporters how to protect and ensure the resilience that was mentioned of our system. But also I think importantly to say, the more options we have, the more resilient we are as well, and that's a plea for the diversification. So the more options, meaning also, I mean, LNG terminals, pipelines, but also different suppliers. So diversification of suppliers and supply routes and different energy sources, the more resilient we are. And I think as we are speaking about Poland, that Poland is actually a good example of pursuing and Baltic states as well mentioned, I agree, of pursuing towards this diversification of gas supplies, LNG terminal, now mentioned Baltic pipe, GIPL, etc. So in a way, the more options we are, the better we are prepared. But sometimes we cannot be prepared for everything. That's what I was saying. I mean, we need to also remember, I mean, incidents like Freeport US terminal, right? That was not operational, and it's not yet fully operational due to technical reasons. Just to also mention, I mean, all infrastructure, gas infrastructure, especially LNG terminals, are basically working on over 100% of their capacities, right? We are really stretching our gas ecosystem in the way. There needs to be maintenances of this infrastructure also from the exports. So I think it's also important to ensure transparency and the dialogues with the international partners, that we know that we are prepared. It won't be, I mean, it cannot work for 3 years without any maintenance. You need to do the maintenance of LNG terminals, also exporting. So those are less, in a way, security threats, but in a way technical threats that I think are also important, and sometimes, as they are also not that catchy, are a bit off the table, but have extremely big impact on our security and also on the gas prices to mention. And I thought about it and I'm replying, yes, everything will be okay.
Thank you very much. In fact, this would be a perfect ending of this short debate, very rich in arguments, very rich in perspectives, and very rich in thoughts about also technical issues, political issues, about also values such as solidarity. And it seems to me after this debate and previous debates that we had in Berlin, that the word solidarity is right now being quoted in almost every discussion about energy. It sounds like a basis for any move within the European Union. Whatever you want to do, you have to take it into account. You have to take solidarity into account, all the more that simply it is already in the European law. So it's not only a value, it is kind of obligation. And I think that it might be an over-optimistic conclusion from this debate, but I am a moderator, I can do so. So for me, solidarity is somehow the only way that we can say that all will be okay in the future. Not only this winter, but in the next ones. And this will, of course, be a test for our solidarity. But I think that we are quite well already prepared, thanks to the work of the Commission, thanks to the national governments, to move on and to test this solidarity with confidence. Thank you very much for this debate. I would like to, if I were there, I would applaud you. I can only do it on in this hybrid distant way. But thank you once again for the debate. I would like to thank the participants for the question. I would like to thank Łukasz for organizing this debate in Press Club. So thank you all, and hopefully next time there will be no such problems with moving to Brussels.